This Lord's Day, I was fortunate enough to be able to celebrate the Eucharist with the local parish community. And one of the things I mentioned to them, because I was so pleased, and am always pleased there, was that their lectors are so good. They're very clear. You really get the message, the proclamation of the Scripture, very clear every Sunday. And that's important because during the course of the year, the Scripture is leading us deeper and deeper into the life of Christ. From December to about June of this last year, we heard from the Scriptures every Sunday all of the great things that God has accomplished for us through Jesus, His Son, Jesus of Nazareth. Then from Pentecost on, we began to hear Scriptures which were instructing us on how to be His disciples, how to let Him live His life continuously through us in our place and in our time. So it's so important that people hear the Scripture clearly so that they are able to respond to it. There's a lot of people in these last days of the Church's year of prayer, and these last 3 weeks, when the Scriptures are centered on the return of Jesus, the so-called second coming of Christ. A lot of Christians get all upset about this and trying to determine when exactly He's coming back and what are the signs of the times. But this is all rather frivolous because Jesus Himself said, even He, as a human being, didn't know the time of His return, only the Father knew it. So to be exercised and to be upset about it and to worry about it is not our place. It's much more important that we experience the coming of Christ on a day-by-day basis rather than waiting for this final coming at the end of the ages. And I was reminded of this especially yesterday because we celebrated the feast of St. Martin of Tours, who was a Roman soldier who decided to become a disciple of Jesus. And he was still unbaptized. He was a catechumen, as they call them. What we would say today, he was in the RCIA program, waiting to become a Christian. And one day he was on duty and he came upon a very poor man in freezing cold weather who had nothing practically to keep him warm. And Martin had nothing, so he took his sword and cut off his great military cloak, the kind that you wrap around yourself like almost a tent to keep warm. And he cut it in half and gave half to the poor man. That night, Christ appeared to Martin wearing that very cloak, the half that he had given to the beggar. And so Martin came to understand, as we need to understand, that Christ needs to be met on a daily basis on the people who come into our lives, whoever they are, relatives and friends, fellow workers, people coming out of nowhere. These are Christ coming to us to be ministered to as Christ came to us to minister to us. So as we enter into these last 3 weeks of the year and think about the return of Jesus, let us not forget to look for His coming, not always in the future, but in the present, in the day-to-day lives of each of us, His disciples. It's a wonderful story about Martin and the response that Jesus had to his generosity by giving half his cloak. But I often wondered what the response was of the quartermaster.